Baharaka Kadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles in Israel who will and teach well. Yeah, to the Akims and the Iwas and Byways and those pushing this word in truth, sincerity, to the brothers and sisters in the truth. Now, I was watching a lesson by one of the brothers, then Daniel Allah. Check out the brother's channel. Yahweh's Messenger's Reasonable Service. But the lesson was for out the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. And the brother did a good lesson, and I just wanted to touch, rally on the back of that lesson there. And check out the lesson, watch the lesson. It's a beautiful lesson. It's not too long, it's 20 minutes. And Lord willing, this lesson isn't too long, but it is edifying. Because sometimes you hear that word spiritual ranting, and we're actually venting, and I'm going to pull up that word venting, where they're getting things off our chest. And it's not, as the brother mentioned in his lesson, the so-called spiritual rant that we may be spiritual ranting, or thinking that what we're saying, we're doing it in the spirit. It's not matching up with how we're meant to be conducting ourselves in the scriptures, when we read the scriptures. And we have to be mindful, we have to be mindful, examining ourselves. And the brother made a good point, like, sometimes maybe pray before you do a lesson. If something's heated you up, pray. Take time out before you do the lesson. Calm yourself down. Think about what you're going to, how you're going to put the lesson forward so that it's edifying. Because more time when we start this quote unquote spiritual rant, which really is just us venting, speaking out of the abundance of our heart. Because you got that saying, a lot of truth is spoken in jest. Well, sometimes when we're quote unquote doing our spiritual ranting, we say things which we really mean, but it's not the way we should be conducting ourselves, or the way we should be thinking according to the scriptures. So this is that word vent. It says give free expression to. It says a strong emotion. And a lot of time you find out that these spiritual rantings, that brothers will be doing is coming from an emotional state, and not a good emotional state. The scripture says, gird up your loins like a man. That's what we should be doing, girding up our loins like men, and not getting over emotional. Whereas a lot of these rantings are actually over emotional rantings. Yeah, so this is Psalms chapter 19 and 13. It says, keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Yeah, let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgressions. It says, keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Now look at that word presumptuous. It says of a person or their behavior. It says failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate. And more time when we are doing this so-called spiritual rant, is it in line with the scriptures? This is what we normally see come out in these spiritual rants. Someone who's brazen, overconfident, arrogant, egotistical, overbold. You're saying things and you don't really care what you're saying. We have to be mindful, because at the end of the day, we will be held accountable for things that we say. We'll be held accountable for things that we think, much less things that we do. You know what I'm saying? So this is Psalms chapter 19 verse 13 again. Says, keep back thy servants also from presumptuous sins. These are not things that we want to do. These are things that we want the Most High to keep us back from doing. Being brazen, overconfident, arrogant, egotistical, not really caring what we're saying. Yeah. It says, and this is what we should be thinking about now. Verse 14, it says, let the words of my mouth, so the things that's coming out of my mouth, and the meditation of my heart, the thoughts that we're actually thinking, we need to be asking the Most High to keep us back from being brazen, overconfident, arrogant, yeah, and say, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. We want the things that we're saying. So if we're going on a quote unquote spiritual rant, we want to know that the things that we're saying, one, is in line with the scriptures, and that they'll be acceptable, yeah, in the sight of the Most High. It says, in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Yeah, shalom, Daniel Allah. And he brought a precept. This is Sirach 32 and 18. It says, a man of counsel will be considerate. And the key thing, it says, a man of counsel. So sometimes, you know, are we being counseled in the things that we're coming out with? Are we getting any counsel? Or are we just speaking off the top of our head, you know, in emotional, in our feelings, and call it a spiritual rant, or whatever spiritual term you want to put to it? Because like the brother would say as well, Daniel Allah or Mashak, like, we're always working in a spirit, but what spirit are you working in? We know that what we want to be doing is working in the Rakah Kadash. That's the spirit we want to be operating in. It says, a man of counsel will be considerate, but a strange and proud man is not daunted with fear. Yeah, they're not daunted with fear. They don't really care what comes out of their mouth. And sometimes you'll hear that, oh, I don't really care, you know, and all kinds of things we'll be saying, but then we're putting it down to a spiritual rant. You know, let me read this again. It says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart, the things we're saying and the things we're thinking, be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. So it says, Sirach 32 and 18, a man of counsel will be considerate, but it's strange, yeah, and we don't want to be seen strange to the Most High. What it says, Zechariah 1 and 18, Zechariah 1 and 8 about strange apparel, which is our character. Yeah, we don't want to be seen strange to the Most High. It says, but a strange and proud man, yeah, is not daunted with fear. And what fear is that? It's fear of the Lord. Yeah, even when of himself he has done without counsel. That's right. It says, be not confident in a plain way. Yeah, meaning being simple, man. It says, it says, be not confident in a plain way. And this is Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. That's why that goes back to the Psalms 19 and 14. Let the words of my mouth, and because everything stems from the heart, from the mind. So if your mind is corrupt, then the words that's coming out will be corrupt. It says let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying. And sometimes we think we're edifying, that time we're just going off on a venting spree, yeah, where it says give free expression to a strong emotion. Yeah, we're being emotional. So it says, let Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying. Because what are we here for? You know, we're here to edify the body, you know, for the perfecting of the saints. It says that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And more time when we're in this quote unquote spiritual rant state, we're not ministering grace unto the hearers. You know, it's a wrong spirit that we're in. And imagine someone new is coming to the truth and hear all of that. You know, us going off on a rant, on a vent. It says presumptuous. I brought that out. That was a person or their behavior. It says failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate. And what it say in James, I think it's James chapter 5, it speaks about the tongue, and it says, let me quickly get that. Yeah. Sometimes we're going into our spiritual rant, or just our ranting, full stop, venting. That's what we're doing, we're venting. Nothing spiritual. James 5, I believe. It's back here. James 5. James 5. 1 second, I'll find this precept here. Yes, like I just want to find this precept here. Give me 2 seconds, I'm just quickly search it on my phone. Or is it James 6? Slack it, Israel. This is James 3. Slack it. James chapter 3 and verse start 5 says, even so the tongue is a little member and boasteth great things. Yeah, so more time when we're in this quote unquote spiritual rant, which is actually a carnal rant, you know, us just venting, we're boasting of great things. It says, behold how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And that little fire that comes from the tongue can actually lead to us being judged by the Most High. It says, verse 9, get to the point what it says, therewith bless we the Most High. Yeah, shouting up, giving up praises to the Most High, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of the Most High. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. So we have to be mindful when we're doing our quote unquote spiritual rantings. You know, is it in line what we're saying with the scriptures? Are we making sure we're not crossing a line from spiritual? I don't want to use ranting because I'm going to look at that word, but spiritual exhortation, I use that word, to carnal venting, carnal ranting. Yeah, this is Romans chapter, Romans chapter 8 and 5. It says, for they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the spirit, the things of the spirit. It says, for to be carnally minded is death. Yeah, a lot of the venting that we're doing, thinking is spiritual, it's actually carnal. And it says, for carnally minded is death. And more time, if, like the brother said in his lesson as well, you know, sometimes you have to watch back your lesson and think, was I operating in the spirit or was I operating in the flesh? And if the spirit is still with you, it will let you know whether you are working in the spirit or in the flesh. Even sometimes when you're doing your ranting, the spirit will be coming out and letting you know, look, you're actually operating in a carnal way. You probably say it yourself, you know, ask to be forgiven for the way you're going on, because your mind is that, you know, the spirit is actually telling you what you're doing is crossing that border now. You're passing that limit. It says, for to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace, which is why we need to be examining ourselves. It says, because the carnal mind is enmity against the Most High, but it is not subject to the law of the Most High, neither indeed can it be. You know, but it speaks about what? Not hating your brother in your heart. And sometimes when we're in this spiritual ranting stage, we are exuding a unhealthy hate for our brother stroke sister. Let me jump back. This is Daniel Allah, Colossians 3 and 8 says, but now ye also put off all these, anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. And let me go to this word rant. It says lengthy, angry, and impassioned speech. Yeah, now it says impassioned. It says filled with or showing great emotion. And when we look at some similar words, it says from the heart. So that goes back to when I was saying a lot of truth is spoken in jest. Then, you know, also a lot of so-called spiritual ranting is us actually venting how we actually feel about a brother or sister from the heart. And we're doing it in a carnal way. Yeah. And when we look at rant, again it says lengthy, angry, and impassioned speech. Yeah. Come back to presumptuous. Some of the words for presumptuous. brazen, overconfident, angry, egotistical, overbold. We see this in a lot of so-called spiritual ranting. Yeah, that's why we know it's not actually the spirit that's working, because these words ain't of the spirit, man. Overconfident, arrogant, egotistical. These things ain't of the spirit. Yeah, this is Matthew. Actually, let me go back. Proverbs 21 and 23. Whoso keepeth his mouth, that's right, and his tongue keepeth his soul from troubles. Very beautiful. James 1:26. If any man among you seem to be religious and bridleth not his tongue. Yeah, because we just read that, the tongue is a small member and that can be hard to tame, but we have to be able to bridle our tongue. But deceiveth his own heart. This man religion is vain. Yeah. This is Matthew 12 and 36. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak. So going back to impassioned, yeah, a lot of things I said is actually coming from the heart. You really mean these things, man. Be mindful. It says, but I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. So going back to Psalms 19 and 14, this is why we really need to take this into consideration, man. This is a beautiful precept. It says, let the words of my mouth, the things I'm saying, and the meditation of my heart, the things that I am thinking, be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Why? Because for out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. Yeah, you can't fool the Most High. He knows. And I'll be honest, I remember one time a brother said something about me, and I was on the comment board. I left a comment, and I wasn't lying in the comment, but the mindset I was in when I left that comment, it wasn't in a loving mindset. So even though I was speaking the truth, the most I could look to jack me up, because the spirit I was in when I left that comment was the wrong spirit. So we have to be mindful of the spirit that we're in when we're doing our spiritual rant or whatever we want to call it. So this is Matthew 12 and 36 again. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified. This is why we need to be making sure we're sticking within the limits of what the scripture teaches, man. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Yeah, that's when we go over that limit now. Which one was it? Yeah, presumptuous of a person or their behavior for failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate. Yeah, that's when we get into that section where it says, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned, because we've crossed the line from being in a spiritual mode to a carnal mindset. This is Sirach from Daniel Allah again, beautiful. Sirach 5 and 2, be not rash with thy mouth. Yeah, be slow to speak, man. Be not quick to open your mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before the Most High. For the Most High is in heaven, and thou upon earth, therefore let thy words be few. Beautiful. Let thy words be few. What was it with which one of these said, let thy words be few? Was it ranting? Yeah, ranting. Lengthy, angry and impassioned speech. Yeah, a lengthy, angry speech from the heart. Yeah, from the heart. So it says, read that again, Sirach 5 and 2. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before the Most High. For Silakia, Ecclesiastes, yeah, further up, Ecclesiastes 5 and 2 says, be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before the Most High, for the Most High is in heaven, and thou upon earth, therefore let thy words be few. Don't be ranting, man. Yeah, don't ranting. Yeah, Shalom, Yahweh the 144. So this is Sirach chapter 19 and 18. It says, the fear of the Lord is the first step to be accepted of him, and wisdom obtaineth his love. So really and truly, you know, when we're crossing that line, we're lacking a fear of the Lord. And it says that is the first step to be accepted of him. Because what will the fear of the Lord do? This is Sirach 5 1 and 21. It says, the fear of the Lord driveth away sins. Because we know what the Most High is like. We know what he can do. So knowing that, what we will do, we'll be mindful, yeah, of the words that's coming out of our mouth and the thoughts that we're thinking, knowing that we will be judged for those things. It says, the fear of the Lord driveth away sins, and where it is present, it turneth away wrath. Yeah, because we're not going to do nothing to now get on the wrong side of the Most High. Yeah, this is Sirach 5 and verse 5. It says, concerning propitiation, concerning appeasement, be not without fear to add sin unto sin. And this is what happens sometimes when we cross that line. You know, it goes from a spiritual admonition, that's what it is, yeah, to a spiritual, unspiritual rant, unspiritual venting. You know, we become impassioned, you know, speaking from the abundance of our heart. Yeah, and it's a dangerous thing. We just need to be mindful, and that goes to me too. Like I said, you know, I've been there where I've left a comment. The comment was true, but when I thought about it, even though it was true, the mindset I was in when I left the comment, it weren't the right mindset, man. So we have to be mindful of the things we think and the things we say. But yeah, I'm going to close out with this precept again. This is Psalms 19. I'm going to start at 12. It says, who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Because at times we'll do things and not really realize that we're sinning. Yeah, it says, keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Yeah, it says, of a person or their behavior, failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate, being brazen, overconfident, arrogant, egotistical, overbold. Yeah, we want the Most High to keep us back from those things. Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression. It says, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Yahweh, my strength, my Redeemer. And what will help us do that? Coming back to this, Sirach 1 and 21. The fear of the Lord driveth away sins, and where it is present, it turneth away wrath. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully the lesson was edifying. You know, with that, we're going to give order for the precepts and everyone that tuned in. You know, going to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Rahar, Rakar, Kadash, Kwam Yasha Allah.